Hey, good morning, and welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. I'm Robert Phoenix, as I have flipped back to the what they call the Spreaker Studio, which seemed to deliver some pretty good audio yesterday when I could not use the online application, which allows me to go right into Spreaker and use their software. So this is on my desktop. It's an application. Anyway, we're back. Welcome to the show. If we're going to continue to use this, I'm going to have to bring in some more tracks and things like that. And so we'll see how it goes. I left this because there was a kind of an issue with the audio before, and I flipped over to the other application and got a lot of good reception and feedback on that. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is just half past, not quite, well, it's about 9 a.m. here in South Central Texas as I resurrect my cells from the somehow forced retreat space I've been in here for the past couple of weeks. I've not gone dark on the website. I just have not been writing a lot. And that is going to change here over the next couple of weeks. I actually have a lot of ideas for the writing stuff. So if you are missing the writing at all, it's coming back, and it'll come back in a fairly strong fashion. Today I'm going to follow up on some of the things I talked about yesterday and the day before. So what we want to do is we want to connect the dots and try to piece things together so that we're not just on a new topic and a new topic. And I can give you more information about things that we've been talking about. And one of the things that that got a lot of interest was the connection with Stanford and SRI, which is the Stanford Research Institute, and the New Age. And it's pretty interesting material that was sent to me by Murray Hill, who is an interesting character. He's an amazing illustrator and pretty switched on. He sends me a lot of tips. He lives down in New Zealand. And so Murray and I were sort of batting things back and forth last night. And there was this, sort of nascent New Age movement in the United States back in the 1940s, which was kind of interesting. Again, it links back to Stanford University, which is always been this sort of progressive light. And the West Coast tends to be the area where a lot of these new ideas are generated from, whether it's Silicon Valley or Stanford Research Institute or the Haight-Ashbury or wherever they're coming from. They generally come out of the Bay Area, which is why I love the Bay Area so much. But what was really interesting is I was looking at Willis Harman, who is one of the guys that's a pretty pivotal hub. He started the Institute of Noetic Sciences. Edgar Mitchell is now running that. Jerry Brown was a big fan of Willis Harman. He named him a scholar emeritus for the state of California, which is, Jerry Brown was Governor Moonbeam at one point in time, so it makes sense that he would name this guy who was totally smitten with New Age ideas and principles and how to reshape the world. And, of course, that's where Jerry Brown's head was at that time. And now Jerry Brown has morphed into this militant leftist socialist, and he's an Aries, so he's going to do whatever the hell he wants, and he'll do it unapologetically. And he's just been around for too long. It's like it's time for Jerry Brown to go, although California, you'll probably try to find a way to clone him, freeze him, whatever, because, well, I guess there'll be somebody there to take his place on the left-hand side of the equation, whether it's Gavin Newsom, although there's talk that Gavin may actually run for president. He's very presidential-looking, Gavin Newsom. He's a little middle of the road, though. I think the Democratic Party may really have more in alignment with Kamala Harris at this point than Gavin Newsom. And Kamala Harris, the Attorney General of California. And she's a hot ticket. So look for Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris. One of the two of them will wind up being governor of the state because California just loves liberal progressive Democratic governors that just pass vaccine bills in the middle of the night, force vaccination bills in the middle of the night while people are asleep and without any care or any kind of accountability to the voter base who, by and large, didn't want it to happen. But they don't give a shit. And that's the way Jerry Brown has always been. Anyway, Jerry Brown was kind enough to bestow an educational emeritus, the scholastic emeritus upon Willis Harmon way back in the day. Now, what's really interesting is that if you look at Willis Harmon, and I did this last night, and you look at the sponsorship that Willis Harmon had, like here, I'm gonna do this just so you guys can check this out. This is a really interesting little journey here, and I'm gonna show it to you right here, and how this happens, or kind of how the world is evolving, and how it's evolved through time. Okay, so if you go to his Wikipedia page, you'll see that his doctoral advisor is Carl Spangenberg. Okay. All right. It says Carl Spangenberg was an American engineer, social scientist, futurist, writer, and visionary. So this is the guy that is kind of the guiding light for Willis Harmon. In all those things, you can just check those boxes for Willis Harmon: engineer, social scientist, academic, futurist, writer, and visionary. Okay. He was advisor of numerous outstanding scientists in Stanford University, including Willis Harman, Robert Hallowell, and Chi Tang Sa. His PhD advisor was William Littell Everett, founding member of the National Academy of Engineering. Okay, so let's go to William Littell Everett. It's right there. It says doctoral advisor. Now, he was born April 14th, 1900, died September 6th, 1986, was a noted American electrical engineer, educator, and founding member of the National Academy of Engineering. He received his PhD from Ohio State University in 1955. He was advisor of numerous outstanding scientists at OSU, including Carl Spangenberg and Nelson Wax. His PhD advisor was Fredrick Columbus Blake. Okay, so it's right there. We're going to click on Fredrick Columbus Blake. Here we go. Fredrick Columbus Blake was an American engineer, social scientist, academic, futurist, writer, and visionary. Do you see a theme here? Now, there's nothing wrong with being a social scientist or an engineer or an academic or a futurist or a writer or a visionary. Those are interesting things. If you've got any interest in life, you would look to the future, try to figure out what's going on. You try to see patterns overall in society. And if you're an engineer, guess what you want to do? You want to impact it, because that's what engineers do. They want to fix things. They want to make things better. They want to create models. They want to create systems. Okay, who's his doctoral advisor? Ernest Fox Nichols. Ernest Fox Nichols was an American educator and physicist born in Leavenworth County, Kansas, received his undergraduate degree from Kansas State University. After working for a year in the chemistry department at Kansas State, he matriculated to graduate school, Cornell University, and received degrees in 1893 and 1897. Put that into context. This guy's going to college in 1893, 1897. So we're going back in time now. But this is all part of a lineage of doctoral advisors. Nichols was awarded the Rumford Prize by the American Academy of Arts and Sciences for his proof that light exerts pressure. He was also elected vice president of the National Academy of Sciences. His advisor of numerous outstanding scientists in the Columbia University, including Fredrick Columbus Blake, that was his doctoral advisor, is Edward Leamington Nichols. So now we're back into this guy. Nichols is born 1854, dies 1937. He was an American physicist. So he was born in England, and he received his education at Cornell. Now, this guy studied at Leipzig, Berlin, and Göttingen. He was appointed fellow in physics at Johns Hopkins and spent some time in the Thomas Edison Laboratory at Menlo Park, New Jersey, and subsequently became a professor of physics and chemistry at the Central University of Kentucky, professor of physics and astronomy at the University of Kansas, and professor of physics at Cornell University. He was elected member of the National Academy of Sciences and was represented by the American Association for the Advancement of Science. He's a big brain. And again now, we're tracing the lineage of the doctoral thesis or the doctoral thesis advisors. Now, who's his advisor? It's Jonathan Johann Benedict Listing. Okay, now we're going back to Germany. J.B. Listing was born in Frankfurt and died in Göttingen. He was born in 1808 and died in 18 1862, he first introduced the term topology in a famous article published in 1847. Although he had used the term in correspondence some years earlier, he independently discovered the properties of the half-twisted strip. So we're in the Mobius realm, okay? So now we're into Germany. In ophthalmology, Listing's law describes an essential element of extracurricular eye-muscle coordination. His doctoral advisor was Carl Friedrich Gauss. And of course, Gauss is a pretty famous person in the realm of physics and light and all kinds of interesting goodies. It says Johann Carl Friedrich Gauss. He was born on the 30th of April in 1777, and he died on the 23rd of February in 1855, was a German mathematician who contributed significantly to many fields, including number theory, algebra, statistics, analysis, geometry, differential geometry, geodesy, geophysics, mechanics, electrostatics, astronomy, matrix theory, and optics. Sometimes referred to as the Princeps Mathematicorum and greatest mathematician since antiquity, Gauss had an exceptional influence in many fields of mathematics and science and is ranked as one of history's most influential mathematicians. How about that? His doctoral advisor, we can just keep going back. These guys just go back into, they get to Europe coming out of the Dark Ages and into the Renaissance. His advisor was Johann Friedrich Pfaff. Johann Friedrich Pfaff was a German mathematician who was described as one of Germany's most eminent mathematicians during the 19th century. He was a precursor of the German school of mathematical thinking, which under Carl Friedrich Gauss and his followers largely determined the lines on which mathematics developed during the 19th century. Okay? Does he have a doctoral advisor? Absolutely. He's got two of them. One is Abraham Kastner. And Kastner was born on the 27th of September, 1719. He was known in his professional life for writing textbooks and compiling encyclopedias. Rather than for original research, George Christoph Lichtenberg was one of his doctoral students and admired the man greatly. He became well known for his epigrammatic poems. The crater Kastner on the moon was named after him. Now, who is his doctoral advisor? It is Christian August Hausen, and he was known for his research on electricity. Again, he comes out of Leipzig. Now we're going back to 1693 to 1743. He researched electrical phenomena. He used a triboelectric generator. In the introduction to his book on this subject, Novi Protectus in Historia Electritatis, published posthumously, Hausen states that he started these experiments shortly before his death. Hausen's generator was similar to earlier generators, such as that of Francis Huckabee, consisted of a glass globe rotated by a cord and a large wheel. An assistant rubbed the globe with his hands to produce static electricity. Okay, now who is his doctoral advisor? Well, it goes back to Johann Christoph Wichmanhausen, 1663 to 1727, German philologist, again Leipzig, which is where he studied. Among the books he published are De Extinctione Ordinis Templarium, The Extinction of the Templars, and many short works on aspects of the Old Testament. Today, Wichmanhausen is best known as a part of a line of scientific genealogy stretching from Menck to Gauss to many other mathematicians. This is the line we're talking about here. Okay, so now his doctoral advisor is Otto Menke, who is another one of these giants in German philosophy and science. Menke obtained his doctorate at the University of Leipzig. So we're going back to 1666 now. He's notable as the founder of the very first scientific journal in Germany. The Mathematics Genealogy Product Database records as many as 69,247 mathematicians and other scientists in his lineage. So there's a lot of people. We're just talking doctoral advisors. And for him, his doctoral advisor goes back to 1622, Jacob Thomasius. Jacob Thomasius. Again, of course, Germany, right? Leipzig. Okay, now his academic advisor is Friedrich Leibnitz. And Leibniz it all starts with him. You look, there is no doctoral advisor for Friedrich Leibniz. This is the guy that starts everything. Everything. He is the sort of the master of it all. He's a lawyer, notary, registrar, professor of moral philosophy at Leipzig. He was the father of Gottfried Leibniz. Leibniz was born in Altenburg, the son of Ambrosius Leibniz, a civil servant, and Leipzig noblewoman Anna Durlan. He completed his master's degree at the University of Leipzig in 1622. He produced a son, polymath, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who's another major brain here. Absolute big brain. So this is the lineage. If you look at his son and you look at his notable ideas, calculus, monads, best of all possible worlds, it's law of continuity, product rule, chain rule, big brain, born July 1st, 1646. Interesting, huh? His doctoral advisor was Bartholomäus Leonhard Schwenkendorfer, and his other academic advisors were Erhard Wiegel, Jacob Thomasius, there's Thomasius again, and Huygens, Christian Huygens, who's an interesting guy. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is Willis Harman's lineage. You can trace it all the way back to Leibniz. And it is not a static lineage. It moves forward into the future. And we're going to look at some of the forward pieces here, or the descendants of Leibniz, because, of course, Willis Harman has people that he advised. And who are those people? We're going to find out right now. So Willis Harman's doctoral students are John B. Thomas, Nils Nilsson, and Norman Abramson. And Abramson is a computer scientist and electrical engineer for the American Aerospace Engineer and Scientist. That's a different one, different Norman Abramson. He worked as a research engineer at Hughes Aircraft. So we got another big brain, right? And his students that he has advised are Thomas Cover and Robert Schultz. So these guys are taken off in aerospace. Now remember, Willis Harman has a relationship. By the way, Willis Harman was at Pearl Harbor. He was on land at Pearl Harbor. Nils Nilsson's another guy who Harman advised. He's a computer scientist. His research has been based mainly on the premise that intelligence is based on knowledge and must be represented explicitly. He works at SRI International, along with Charles Rosen and Bertram Raphael. He's got his own students that he advises, Leslie P. Cabling, Andrew Cossero, and Karen Myers. I don't know who any of these people are. Leslie P. Cabling is an American roboticist, and he is a professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. She is a graduate at Stanford University Institute of Nils Nilsson. Her research focuses on decision-making under uncertainty, machine learning, and sensing with applications to robotics. There we go. So we're getting to see the robotics angle here. Karen Myers, who is another student. There's no info for Karen. And then we have Andrew Cossero. There's no info for him. And then the other person is John B. Thomas. So his people are, let's see, Vincent Poor, Jack Wolf, Abraham Haddad, Dag Schestheim, Hisashi Kobayashi, and Eugene Wong. So a quick look at some of these people. We have information encoding theory. That's Jack Wolf. He's at the University of Pennsylvania. And let's see what else we have here. Vincent Poor, and he's involved with signal processing, information theory, wireless communication. and stochastic analysis, statistical signal processing, information. These people are big brains. Big brains. And of course, what they do, some of them are involved in they're involved in industry, right? They're involved in corporations, research and development. So what I was trying to share here is this lineage that goes all the way back to Leibnitz and to Harman and into the future. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because if you look at the role of the engineer is to make things better and more efficient, correct? That's the whole idea. Now, if you wed that to social theory, let's say it's devoid of social theory, and you've got a car that gets 25 miles per gallon, and you're an engineer and you say, I want that car to get 45 miles per gallon. Now, you may have a social theory connected to it. If you get that car, you'll use less gas. It'll be more economical, more efficient. The money that you save by getting more miles per gallon gets to be used into pump back into the economy. Maybe you use it, save it, start a business. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you look at that savings. That's one way to look at it, but maybe your goal really is just to make a better engine, a more efficient engine. Now, when it gets wedded to social theory, which is what Willis Harman was doing and what SRI does, is that now there's the engineering component, which is very real, by the way. You know, it's like looking at how things fit together from a technological and mechanical perspective, and then you wed the social theory to it, and now you've got a new paradigm, which is coming. The outgrowth of all of this is what's taking place with the Internet of Things, with 5G, and smart cities. And the guys behind that are coming out of places like Stanford, Google Research, MIT, Cornell, and they're putting ideas together so that essentially the type of society that we'll be living in will be, for the most part, automated. Everything will be automated. For the most part. I mean, think about it. If we're dealing with 5G networks, which are very powerful and quite dangerous, and you have the Internet of Things, which means everything that you own is connected to the Internet. So, for instance, if you're watching TV, and this happens already now, right? If you're using Netflix or Roku or one of these other services, if you are on the TV for too long, it'll ask you, hey, are you still watching? And if you don't respond, they'll shut the TV off. It's a really basic fundamental thing. But they'll have other things going on where the appliances will essentially talk to each other, and they'll have little radio transmitters inside. We've talked about this before. And that everything will be governed, you know, with a mainframe computer in a very sophisticated, powerful fashion. They'll know where energy surges are, and they'll know what time that the energy depletes, and they'll manage all that. Now, this is really going to be a part of the Paris Accord. These were the types of agreements that were kind of built into that, so that you wouldn't really have any say over your energy usage. That's the bottom line. It would just all be based on mathematical formula. And that's just part of it. The other part of this is, and this is the Zuckerberg piece, which we talked about yesterday, is that if we move into the smart cities and if we move into the Internet of Things, and the model of the engineers is to create this utopia based on not just efficiency from a product perspective, but also from a human perspective. Because the definition of the human is going to change. It's going to change, especially when you have people like Ray Kurzweil coming in and saying, hey, look, we're going to make you better. We're going to upgrade you. Elon Musk talks about this. You know, the only way that we can compete with AI is if we get upgraded. That's Elon Musk's strategy. So even the definition of human will be changed. The definition of what a human does will be changed. A definition of what a goal or a a goal or God, I'm having a blank moment here. A desire for a human will change, right? A target. If you have a goal or a target, that changes. Because if the social economy changes, if the technological economy changes, then the goals and the targets change as well. The same types of aspirations or the same types of targets for achievement, they change. And so by definition, the humanity changes. And what are our needs and our goals and our wants and desires? What are they based upon at that point? The social engineer comes in. The social engineer and the mechanical engineer, the technical engineer, they come together and they have solutions. And then we get into the whole universal wage, universal income that Zuckerberg is talking about. And now we're a very different kind of species. And I'm not sure how long that species can actually exist, because in some ways we need to push ourselves. We need to push ourselves either against the environment, we need to push ourselves against inertia, we need to push ourselves against the existential threat of tyranny. To some degree, this is what being a human is about. Not all the time. Other times we can not push ourselves and we go in a different direction and we go with the flow, and that happens. We know this. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of circle back to this because what's really interesting is if you listen to Al Bielek, one of these guys that was part of the Philadelphia experiment, who has about 3 different names. You know, there are 3 different names, 3 different identities: Duncan Cameron, Al Bielek, all these different characters, right? Al Bielek claims that he went into the future, and I've read this before on the show, and I played the recording of him on the show before, and he talks about how in the future he witnesses this kind of utopian society, and that cities are essentially floating. They're like cloud cities. This is what they've created, these enormous cities where everybody's needs are taken care of. The entire infrastructure is governed and run by a mainframe computer that was set up by a group of engineers that has a remotely kind of Zen, sort of slightly spiritual, philosophical manifesto that it operates from. And everybody's needs are met, and they all, you know, it's all kind of, you know, warm and fuzzy. And if you don't like it, there's 2 options. One, they eliminate you, or the other is they send you out into the non-cloud city world where you have to fend for yourself, which apparently is not real pretty. And in some ways, it's kind of a distillation and summation of where things are going with the smart cities initiatives and, you know, the shutting down of rural areas. So if we can take this and what Bielek is talking about, and we can look at this whole tract of social and mechanical and electrical, computational, robotics engineers that are wedded to social theory, and we extend it out from the beginning with Leibniz and go through Harman and into the future, you can see where this could actually be a possibility. And that the world as we know it will be modeled and dictated by a group of very sophisticated engineers who will set everything up. It's not out of the question. All right, so we covered that. Now, with the remaining time that we have here today, I don't want to go over too much because this is supposed to be, kind of a bang, 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 bang kind of thing. I wanted to talk about what's happening with this whole terror thing, which is it's really up front now. And I'll think about things quickly, and then all of a sudden I'll see them as a headline or a news story. And one of the things I was thinking about was that terror is the new normal. It's like, just get used to it. And this is what's coming out of London and Paris and places where they have these events that are either real or staged or manufactured or fake or whatever they are. And this is it. They're just saying, hey, get used to it. We're just going to have to live with this. And this is the outgrowth of a clash of civilizations and a miscegenation of cultures, and it's going to happen. They view this as growing pains. Trust me. These are the growing pains. Now, what's happened is that Islam has been weaponized by both sides. So on the left, the far left, the progressive, the no borders, one world, hey, white man, step off world, they decided that they were going to bring all these people into Europe. And, we talked about this before. We talked about this a long time ago. I wrote about this like 3 years ago. When I was on Gaia, I talked about this. I did a whole show about it. And the refugee crisis as it relates to Neptune and Pisces and Chiron and Pisces and playing on our sympathies and displacement and confusion and miscegenation of principles and people and cultures and directives and motivations and how real is it, how unreal is it, all in that Piscean kind of watery, out of focus, but we've got to do good, it's our right, compassionate, modeling the principles of the Catholic and the Christian Church and Jesus in many ways, although co-opted into a secular humanist adaptation of those principles, all taking place. Then there's Barbara Specter Lerner essentially saying, hey, get ready, Europe. You're going to be diverse. You're going to be multicultural. And she even says it in the video. You can go online and you can see this. We talked about this 3 years ago. Or 2.5 years ago, however long it was, and she said, and the Jewish people are going to play a role in it, and you're not going to like it. Well, tough shit. She's basically saying this, okay? So we know this. What's happened is that those people who've been displaced in places like Libya, thank you, Hillary Clinton, thank you, Barack Obama, for creating a hell on earth by taking out Muammar Gaddafi. Was Gaddafi perfect? No, he wasn't perfect. But look what's happened. And you've got all these Libyans now and the North Africans, and they're washing ashore. And then you have all these displaced people from Iraq and Afghanistan. And by the way, I was corrected about my racial topography, cultural racial topography of Afghanistan. Very interesting. I researched it. Afghanistan has about 6 different ethnic and religious groups that are engaged in the overall population of Afghanistan. Very, very interesting. Anyway, so this is where the people are coming from, and of course, we've been involved in this fake war with ISIS. For like 4 years now, 3 or 4 years. But it's real enough because people are again dying and being displaced. Just look at Aleppo. And they've got to go places, and now they're mixing in the sub-Saharan North Africans. They're bringing in the Somalians and the Malians, and all these groups now are getting mixed in. And it's not just people from Libya who really should still be living there under Muammar Gaddafi's rule, or not just in Syria, northern Syria, or southern or western Iraq, or southern Afghanistan. It's where people are being displaced because there's been a war there. There was actually, a pretty peaceful environment with Syria, and a lot of people hate Assad, and there's no reason to hate the guy. He's just trying to run a country. But because we've had all these things going on, we've had all this displaced people. Now they're bringing in other people from other parts of the world who have nothing to do with any of those wars. But hey, they need new places to live anyway. And Europe gets a lot of money. They get a lot of money to take these people in. But they're being weaponized. They're being weaponized because their values, their morals, their religion. I mean, I'm not an Islamophobe, but I'm telling you, man, you get large numbers of people who have been in war environments, who have had their brains scrambled because they've lost people that they've loved, or they're part of a Wahhabist, Salafist, extreme ideology, or they're just essentially, people that are not really, I hate to use the word, but all that evolved. You know, they have very different values, and they're coming in and they're wreaking havoc. So they've been weaponized. They have been weaponized, and they've been turned against the people of Europe. Now, the Central Europeans, they're no fools. They're seeing what's going on. The Poles and the Hungarians and the Czechs are like, hey, you know, they're at the borders with crosses in their hands, right? They're like, stay away. And what's going to happen is that they will have pressure put on them to accept these refugees, because what they want is they want a world without borders. It's a weaponization. It's a weaponization. And of course, if they wanted to, they could have. There's an abandoned. It's a brand new city. Nobody lives there. It's in Saudi Arabia. It could take 350,000 people. Look it up. They can put them all there. But do they want to? No, because there's a plan. The plan is to weaponize them and to destabilize Europe and to basically wipe out Europe. And America is right after them and right on the hit parade. So they've been weaponized. Now, from the left's perspective, and this is really interesting as we watch this and watch this evolve, now it's become this wedge between the right and the left. Because the right says, we don't want these people here. Keep them out. Keep them out. And this is what Trump has been saying, and Trump is just full of bullshit. Because he's not really doing anything. He's like hung up on this weird travel ban stuff. And apparently there's things he could do quite easily. And he is contracted to take, about 3,000 a week, 3,000 refugees a week or something like that. It's enormous. He's not doing anything about it. His daughter, obviously, Ivanka, she's an open borders Chica. She's open borders. That's what she wants. So now we have the left. So the right says we don't want this. We've got to vet. We've got to slow this process down. And if you look at the languaging around all this, and it's now been switched, and everybody knows this is the crazy making. Everybody knows it. It's quote unquote Islamic terrorists. Now, whether it is or it isn't, whether these people are being manufactured by MI6, whether they're Mossad groups, whether they're crisis actors, whether they're all of the above. The bottom line is it's basically this, Islamic ideological meme. That's what it is. But they don't talk about it now in that way. Oh, he was born in England. He was born here. He wasn't, he's not from that place. It's a very big distinction, right? He's not from Libya. No, he was, whatever. Whatever. It's okay. You can parse it. But that's where the madness is. That's where the cognitive dissonance is. And everybody knows it. And you can't, and now it's like you get to this point where by saying they're radical Muslims, that's considered hate speech. Even Trump has dropped the word. So that's a level of cognitive dissonance. And whether or not it's true is a whole other matter to begin with, because as we know that there's a lot of different layers to these things and when they happen and who perpetrates them and why and all that goes along with it. But the bottom line is they've been weaponized. So now the left is rallying to their cause. And the left says, hey, step off, This has got to be good. We have got to support these people because those old white men, like Kathy Griffin is referring to, they're not into this. They don't want this. So if they don't want this has got to be good. We've got to support this. We have got to support this from an ideological perspective because it is anti what they want. It is the exact opposite. So we've got to double down with this. That's what that's about. From the weaponization. Now you have a mobilized left who doesn't care. It's like, yeah, come on in, do whatever you want. Rape my daughter, rape my son, whatever. And again, I'm not an Islamophobe, but these things do happen. They do happen. They're not made up stories or fake news. They're quite real, and they're rampant across Europe, and they're becoming more prevalent in this country. And now you have the right, and they're using this and they're weaponizing it. Well, we need more security. We need more information. Teresa May is talking about using the internet. See, this is a real bad place for England, and I feel sorry for the English people. Because on the one hand, they've got Jeremy Corbyn, who is about as socialist as it gets. And he's got a connection with these guys who are part of the bridge thing. He talked to them. He interviewed them. It's not a good look. It's just not a good look. It looks like it's enabling because they were raising money for ISIS. Hello? Does ISIS really need money to get raised for them? No, because the American taxpayer is paying for ISIS. Hey, did you know that? Were you aware of that? I bet you weren't. It's true, though. If it's not you, it's the secret budgets that could be used for projects in this country that are able to provide resources for these radicals who are now in the Philippines. Now, what beef does ISIS have with the Philippines? Can you answer me that? What is their beef? You know, I'll tell you what their beef is. Their beef is that their mercenary army, Duterte, who is the president of the Philippines, wants drugs out of his country. Gee, what happens when you want to get drugs out of your country? The people that are supplying the drugs, they say, well, wait a minute. We're making a lot of money off those drugs. We're not sure we want to take our drug trade elsewhere. So what do? They bring in thugs. They bring in ISIS. It's like now he's got a war in his hands. And it's capitulation. And the capitulation is, oh, listen, Duterte, Mr. Duterte. He's an Aries, by the way. I think he's an Aries. He's either an Aries or late Aries or he's a Taurus. Listen, Mr. Duterte, if you want drugs out of your country, if you want this war, this ISIS war to end, and by the way, they'll be there and they'll bring more people in and more people in and more people in. If you want it to end, just back off that drug thing. Just back off that drug stance, and guess what? We'll proclaim that you're a victor over ISIS. Wouldn't that sound good in the press? That you're a victor over ISIS. Which would be, could be further from the truth. But that's what they do. This is how they wire these things. Anyway, this has been weaponized. Islam, Muslims, it's all been weaponized. And it's all been weaponized because it furthers an agenda on both sides. And both sides ultimately are working towards, I hate to say it, the same goal. The same goal. And this clearly was proved by somebody who went through Stanford, Anthony Sutton, in his work with the globalists and skull and bones and the Hegelian dialectic and all that stuff. We do these things to bring awareness, or at least I do these things to bring awareness and attention to some of the social issues that we're grappling with. And the most important thing is to kind of understand what's driving these forces. What's driving these events, or the forces that are driving these events, and what's behind them. Because at the very least, you may feel a little more empowered by your understanding of what's going on any number of different levels. Now, what you do with it, well, at least you have some basis in understanding. At some point, there's only two things. There's only three ways sort of through and out of this. I guess four if you have the eschatological model. And the eschatological model, of course, is the end of some world, right? So there's only three ultimate ways that we get through this period of time, or four. The eschatological version, which is end times, revelatory, boom. Okay, out of your hands, it just happens. Civil war, which is possible. Oh, let me get back to Teresa May. I apologize. I wanted to finish that thought. What Teresa, and I'll finish this off and we'll say goodbye today. Teresa May wants to govern the internet. She wants to because the whole idea here, do you see where the weaponization of this is taking place? She wants to govern the internet because there's too much trading, or too much freedom of movement, or too much freedom of thought, and the ability to stage or promote hate crimes, or promote hateful ideologies, or to recruit. And the internet is this tool, it's a very powerful tool, which enables the terrorists to theoretically get stronger and, be more creative and whatever, right? So Teresa May's solution is that the government's going to get in the middle of it all, and that everything will have to pass through kind of a governmental filter. And that's what she's talking about. So if she wins, get ready, England. Your freedom, whatever freedoms you have left on the internet, are going to go away drastically. And guess what? The United States be maybe 2 to 3 events behind that. And Trump will gladly chime in and say, we've got to get control of the internet. These people are dangerous, blah, 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 blah. You know the story. You know the invective. You know the rhetoric. You know the hyperbole. It's going to happen. And they're working on dismantling net neutrality. And when that's done, it's over, boy, look out. The throttling occurs, paying for more bandwidth occurs. Certain providers, if they don't like your content, they'll block it. So we're in a very precarious state, and it's because of the war on terror, again, being weaponized, that it's really encroaching on our personal freedoms and the expression of them through the internet. Bottom line, end of story, done. Okay, so moving forward, what can you do? What can we do? One, a revolution. A revolution cleanses everything. 2, World War III, which is bordering on the eschatological component. 3 would be something along the lines of a competing model. And I talked about this yesterday with when you look at Zuckerberg, and you look at Sergey Brin and Page and Elon Musk, and you look at Bill Gates, and there's a bunch of other people that you don't know about in Silicon Valley that have huge sums of money that are promoting a certain type of ideology and social matrix. And there's really there are people on the right who have a lot of money, don't get me wrong. I mean, the Mercer family has a ton of money, and they support Steve Bannon and his ideas. But I never get the sense, right, that there's like somebody really cool in the middle that's got a lot of cash that says, hey, look, I get it, that there are people out there that are not, wedded to the Mike Huckabee world of being on the right, or there are not people wedded to being on the Koch version of the right. That there are people that are actually really interesting, thinking, passionate, spiritual, independent, creative people that don't have any real economic representation. You see, if that void could be filled, now you've got the potential for competing models. But it's not, because everything moves towards some higher level of profit. And at some point, you're just dealing with other people who are trafficking in profit. And we can see where, the profit is emanating from. It's just, it's kind of this law in some ways. This immutable law. And to stand against it takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of chutzpah. I think somebody like Howard Hughes was one of those people. He could have been one of these people that actually had a ton of money and some really interesting ideas, and ideas around being, how should we say this, more independent, but compromised. This is what happens when people get really, really wealthy. They tend to be, hey, you either go along the program or we're going to compromise you. That's another part of it. But that's one aspect. If there was a kind of a movement, an economic movement that was counter to what's happening, that could be interesting. So we've got the eschatological, World War III, a revolution. We have the economic model that's a competing economic model. And the 5th is a spiritual awakening. And that is I think, probably the easiest and the best way for us to turn this tide. But in order to turn it, it's got to be different than anything that we've seen before. And there are a lot of theories out there that we're being hampered with our spiritual evolution due to things like huge amounts of lumen in our body, a darkening sky where there's not a lot of ultraviolet rays, the crapification of our food, the amount of time we spend on our cell phones, all of the Gwen networks and 5G coming on, that ultimately it cuts us off from our God source. And I would agree with that. It's getting harder and harder and harder to stay in touch with that. But ultimately, we're going to have to break through that. We're going to have to evolve. We're going to have to mutate. We're going to have to come up and rise up and vibrate above these things, because I think that's the only way. That is the only way, and that is the new mythology that we'll have to embody. And there's no roadmap for that. Maybe some post-New Age stuff, but this is something totally new, totally different, and I don't think we're quite there yet. In some ways, we have to get out of the left-right paradigm to do that, and that's the bottom line. It's important to see it. It's important to understand it. It's important to know what's going on, and we've got to create new bridges towards a higher mode of consciousness that allows us to do certain things, right? Because in this world, most of us are kind of at the barrel of a gun. Even if it's not a real gun, it's a metaphorical gun. Whether it's something like the IRS or whatever, right? But we are dealing with forces and principalities of this world. They're not of this world, but they incarnate into social institutions and hierarchies and all these other kind of minions, just like the Matrix. And in order to deal with that, we have to develop our own set of unique skills, gifts, abilities, and powers. And, it's not easy to do, especially when you're living 9 to 5. But I think that's really the, where it's at. And it is not separate from God. I mean, here's where, and I'm going to end this really quickly. There's this model, right? Like, okay, you've just got to give it all over, and then if the world ends, and I'll see you on the other side. I mean, that's a big model. You give it up, you surrender this world is fallen, whatever, and we'll see you on the other side. And after the rapture takes place, we get to come back in, and you get to kick it and live this beautiful existence. Hey, look, it's probably an option, right? It's an option. Or at least it is an option for people to model their lives around, because in some ways it takes a lot of effort out of it all, right? You don't have to, you do have to do something. You have to stay in touch and devoted and do all the things that keep you connected and all those things, which there's nothing wrong with that. But there's nothing to do there. You're just kind of playing out the string, right? Playing out the string and keeping your faith solid and bonded with others and growing in your faith, so that ultimately the faith becomes stronger, and things just happen the way they happen, and you sit back with some nice sweet tea, watch it all go down, and then you come back down if there's something to come back down to, and then you get to inhabit everything. But is that the only model? Isn't there another model here? I think there is. Anyway, that's enough for today. All right, you've been listening to Robert Phoenix. This is your 15 Minutes of Flame. And I'll be back tomorrow, 24 hours from now, as I play host to my son for the next 2 weeks. And it's 54 Minutes of Flame. These things are getting longer and longer. I apologize. I promise tomorrow will be 30 minutes. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say when it's possible. Have a great day.